Okay, welcome back to the channel. Um, I really hope this video is going to be helpful for somebody. What I want to cover is, I would say how to learn Biblical Greek, but what I think is more appropriate is just to tell you how I'm learning Biblical Greek and then tell you why and some of the things that I've learned about language learning over the past 5 or 6 years and how I've been at least somewhat successful at learning languages. Some people want to learn or they think about learning it, but they don't know where to start. Other people, they have started, but they need more resources, or something is not effective, or they just want to learn more about how to be efficient at learning New Testament Greek. And it's basically my strategy and my suggestion is to treat it like you're learning any other language, and it will be much more efficient and enjoyable than learning it the way that most people learn Biblical Greek, or most seminaries, I think, would teach Biblical Greek. If you've ever tried to start, chances are you have heard about people using something like Machen as a grammar textbook. Get yourself a little Greek dictionary or a something like the Thayer's lexicon. And I have used these things basically very little. I have used them very little in my process of learning. I did find Machen's Biblical Greek helpful, but only after I had done some basics in learning Greek. And so that kind of leads me to the first thing you should try to do is decide. You have a decision before you have ever started anything. I highly recommend that you do not focus 100% of your energy in learning Biblical Greek in only New Testament Greek. My very strong recommendation is learn Greek in general. That means modern Greek and classical Greek and Biblical Greek. The reason you should do that, because it will open up the entire world for you in terms of resources, things that once you become an intermediate in Greek, you're going to have a lot more options. It's very difficult to actually learn Greek because of the lack of resources. All of your resources in New Testament Greek are written down. So you've got printed texts that you can read from. You've got manuscripts. You have the New Testament. You've got the Greek Old Testament, Septuagint. But you really don't have a ton of material that's in an auditory form. So my experience from learning Spanish, it took me thousands of hours. I have thousands of hours basically of exposure over the course of years to Spanish in spoken form. That's part of becoming fluent in the language, is actually just tons of exposure to the language. And if you restrict yourself to New Testament Greek, you're going to be a lot more limited in terms of your exposure to the language, and it's going to be a lot harder to stay motivated, and you're going to have fewer resources you can rely on. So that's the first thing. Out of the gate, my recommendation is learn Greek in general, including modern Greek. Matter of fact, my main focus would be modern Greek at the very beginning, just because of the resources that are there at first. So that's my suggestion. And we'll get into those resources in just a minute. But with that suggestion, the second choice you have to make is what pronunciation should you use? Part of learning a language, part of learning the language and being able to talk about it is pronouncing the language. So you got to be able to read the words off the page and pronounce it. So because there are speakers of Greek today, they speak using modern pronunciation. You can read the New Testament with modern pronunciation. That's my suggestion. If you you basically have the choice, three choices. You've got this reconstructed pronunciation, On YouTube, there's a guy who has developed something called Lucian pronunciation. There's reconstructed pronunciation. Then you have what they call Erasmian pronunciation. I'm going to steer you away from it. If you're an English speaker, you will always be able to understand Erasmian pronunciation because they basically read the Greek letters as though they were letters in the Roman alphabet, reading something in English. So you'll always be able to understand Erasmian. It'll be completely intuitive to you to do that. But if you learn with modern pronunciation, you can actually use resources in modern Greek and learn the language a lot more efficiently, because you're going to be able to do things like, for example, watch Aladdin or Lion King or Star Wars animated series on Disney Plus or something like that in Greek, and actually get something out of it and understand the words that are being said in a way that you wouldn't be able to do that. If you use Erasmian pronunciation, you can't do anything that's in any kind of modern form. So all the resources that are out there for learning Greek in modern Greek, they're going to be shut off to you. So that's my recommendation. First of all, learn modern Greek alongside New Testament Greek, as well as use the modern pronunciation. Those two things are my main tips out of the gate. Those are the first two decisions you got to make when learning, and then the rest of it is how to start. I can't tell you necessarily how to start. I can tell you how I started and what resources I found helpful and resources that I did not find helpful. So, my very first thing that I used for learning Greek, I went into it completely blind, and then I got Pimsleur. So Pimsleur was not that helpful. I'll be honest. It was not that helpful. Some people find it helpful because it's audio only, so it focuses your listening comprehension. But there's not a lot of vocabulary. There is a lot of repetition, which is good, but there's no, it's not very dense in vocabulary. But that's Pimsleur. There are 3 resources that I will say that are basically applications or tools that are online to use as a beginner. 3 resources I can recommend. First recommendation is something called Language Transfer. It's totally free. It's a series. Actually, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Language Transfer in Greek. And so basically, it is a playlist of 120 videos. And you just watch these 120 videos. You just go through, they're 8 minutes at a time, 10 minutes, whatever they are, and you just go through as much of that as you possibly can, and maybe even repeat them. But Language Transfer, I do recommend Language Transfer. It's free. It's not going to cost you anything. It's just time. All you got to do is just listen to it. It's basically a guy in a classroom teaching students individually, helping them progress step by step in a course of Greek, and it's very helpful, especially for a beginner. So that's Language Transfer. The other one is one called Lingq, Lingq. That's an application made by Steve Kaufman. Steve Kaufman is very well known in the polyglot community. He knows like 14 different languages, and he is highly recommended. Actually, his channel in general about learning languages is recommended. Steve Kaufman has a lot of material on how to just learn languages in general. But his application, they've got these mini stories that are kind of like a graded reader, where you're starting out at a beginner level, and so you've got beginner level stuff where you're hearing the words, you're actually seeing the text on the screen as they're reading the words, and they're telling you a story. And they're fairly easy to understand stories that get gradually more difficult. I wouldn't start out with Lingq from the very, very beginning. What I would do is jump into that after you've had some Language Transfer and also Duolingo. The only reason I recommend Duolingo is because Babbel and Busuu and some of the other better applications don't exist for Greek. So you're kind of forced to use Duolingo if you want to start out. However, if you do Duolingo with a mind to learn the language and not to treat it like a game and not to only do one lesson every, once a week or something like that, if you consistently use it and you focus on, if the language aspect of Duolingo is the main thing that you're getting out of the app, then Duolingo can work alongside these other things at getting out of that beginner stage. You'll learn basic vocabulary, you'll learn how sentence structure works, and by the time you're way into the Duolingo tree, you will have some level of competence in understanding the language as it's written down. Not a lot of other apps out there. I've not found almost anything that actually goes above the extreme beginner level in terms of apps. There's not a ton. I will say there's not a ton. Your goal starting out should be blow through as much beginner level material as you possibly can starting out. You want to become an intermediate in the language as fast as possible because that's what opens the world to you for reading novels, reading books, and things like that in the language. You've got your whole life to learn the language, but don't be a perpetual beginner. Try to actually achieve a goal of becoming an intermediate in the language where it's actually usable. You embark on your learning journey for New Testament Greek, and you start by learning modern Greek. But what about the differences between New Testament or Biblical Greek and the Greek that is spoken today? What's the difference? Well, there are differences. They are significant, but the similarities are stronger than the differences. And so what I would recommend, I'm not sponsored by anyone at all. All I can do is just recommend. So Bruce Gore has a series on Greek. I think it's like 30 videos or something like that. And it's pretty good. He goes through Machen. So if you want to get Machen, New Testament Greek for beginners, you want to get yourself a copy of that and then follow along with the lessons that he goes through. I do recommend that. It's okay. You're not going to get very far with it, but you are going to get some level of, again, introductory material and lessons into the grammar of Biblical Greek. But I actually had 10 times that, probably 10 times better experience in terms of gaining vocabulary and comprehension in Biblical Greek was through a guy's channel. His name is Peter Brown. And all he does basically is type in Peter Brown New Testament, and he reads through entire books of the New Testament, and also, Homer, the Iliad, stuff like that. And he just basically is just reading through the text. His playlist where he just went through the book of Revelation was extremely helpful for me because all he's doing, he'll read it in Greek and then actively translate, pointing out all the different words of the book, and just go straight from the beginning of the book all the way through the last chapter, just reading it and translating along the way on the spot. So he is actually pretty helpful, and I actually may make some videos showing some of the syntactical differences between New Testament Greek and modern Greek, because there's actually not that many. There's not that many differences between modern Greek and Biblical Greek that aren't, it's basically, if you spend 2 or 3 hours learning the differences, then every single time you see certain words, it's just immediately not a problem anymore. Once you know the differences, it's just not that big a deal. And that's why I suggest learning modern Greek. But once you've actually gotten some form of the basics, then you're going to want to start getting real content that is spoken and written. So the way I would do that, I can suggest you a couple things. For the New Testament aspect of it, I can recommend this. This is a Textus Receptus Reader's Edition of the New Testament. So this is the Greek New Testament, and it's a Reader's Edition. The nice thing about this is that it has got just the Greek text, but everywhere that there is an uncommon word, it basically will point out that it's an uncommon word, and then you'll look it up on the left-hand side of the page, and it'll tell you what that word means. And so basically, you can just pick this up. You don't need a dictionary or a lexicon or anything. You just read it, and you should have a basic knowledge of what's going on for the most part. And then all these uncommon words, you just look over to the left-hand side. It'll tell you what part of speech it is and what it means and that kind of thing, and you can just read the New Testament. So I do recommend that. This is a Greek New Testament, and they are very affordable. So from the Trinitarian Bible Society, it's a Textus Receptus as well. And I think last time I saw these were like $8. It's a really nice edition. It's Smithsonian binding. It's a nice hardcover. It's just a text. There's no notes or anything. It's just Greek letters on the page, but it's really helpful. And if you get a Textus Receptus and you have either a King James or a New King James, it's going to correspond basically between this and the English of the King James. And both the King James is a very formal equivalent translation, so they did a pretty good job of being word for word. And so that's why you get a Textus Receptus and you have a King James, you can read them side by side and really nice. So I do recommend those as far as New Testaments. You can also get something like this. The Apostolic Fathers by Holmes. Nice thing about this is that you've got all these different letters of the earliest church fathers, and it's got the English on one side and it has the Greek on the other side of the page. So you've got the same chapter in Greek and in English just on one page, so you can kind of go back and forth and see how well you understood when you read it in Greek, that kind of thing, or see what something means if you don't understand it. So I do recommend something like that. On the modern side, I do recommend reading novels. I can tell you from experience, the fastest way to gain vocabulary in a language is to read books. Books are the by far, and it's not even a contest. You will gain vocabulary by reading books more than anything out there. You just have to find a book that is on something close to your level. And so what I'm doing, I am working my way through the first Harry Potter book. I've never read a Harry Potter book. But Harry Potter is a very well-known book series, and it's translated into, I don't know how many different languages Harry Potter's translated. So basically what I can do is just read, and as I'm reading it, I come across a paragraph that I don't understand. And when I very first started reading the book, almost every paragraph, I would read it and try to get as much as I could out of just by reading it. Then I would highlight the chapter, and then I have another app on my phone, which is a Greek English translator. And so I'll just copy and paste that paragraph into the translator, and then it'll translate it for me, and then basically I can read that and see how well I got it, and also use that to learn the words that I didn't know. And so the further I get in this book, the less I'm having to rely on that to get a gist of what's going on. It's actually very motivating to work your way through Harry Potter, and then by the end of the book, maybe you'll be able to read most of it without having to translate anything. So it's something I highly recommend is to read. But also, the nice thing about choosing modern Greek is that, people know the Greek language for the Greek people is a national treasure. But people in Greece today are speaking Greek, and that is their national language. And it's one of the oldest languages on the planet, and it still has a large segment of the population or a large number of people speaking it. And so, not a dead language. Children can't read subtitles, but there's a lot of animated movies that are made for children. And so the way that you would have Greek children watch these animated kids shows is by having a voice actor dub these kids shows. So you'll find that all your Disney classics, there's a lot of animated stuff on Disney that is actually dubbed into Greek, into modern Greek. And so you can watch that with English subtitles, or you can watch it with Greek subtitles, whatever. And you're basically just watching a movie, a Star Wars animated series, or Aladdin or some classic Disney movie. You're watching it in Greek, and so you're enjoying something, and you understand what's going on, especially if you've seen the movie in English, and they're speaking it in Greek, and you've got subtitles. It's really good. You can't really do that if you only study New Testament Greek. And so you can watch series in Greek, you can watch Disney movies and animated shows, but you can also watch on YouTube. One thing that really helped me learn Spanish was watching people stream. So you got people who stream video games and stuff like that. If you're watching a streamer play a game in a language, the game may or may not be dubbed in the language. All the text on the screen that he's playing will probably be in the language that he's speaking. And he's also reading things off the screen in his language. He'll often, if he's playing a game in English, he'll translate it for you. And he's speaking to the audience, his audience, or whoever it is that's streaming. They speak to their audience in the spoken language. And so you have so much different exposure to the language by watching streams. And a lot of times you can actually understand what's going on just by, all the things that are happening on the screen. You can tell by how they're reacting, what they might be saying. So streams actually really helped me learn Spanish. And the same is true for Greek. If you watch people stream in your target language, it can be very helpful, especially as an early intermediate and then upward. So those are the kinds of resources that you can get if you choose, hey, I'm going to use modern pronunciation and I'm going to use modern Greek. And then when you do that, a lot of possibilities open up for content and the language you're trying to learn. But the main thing at the end of the day is that you are motivated. So you got to think and decide why it is that you're learning the language, and you have to visualize yourself meeting your goal, achieving your goal. You got to visualize yourself actually being able to use the language competently. You got to visualize yourself learning it and progressing, and you have to enjoy the process. And so if you want to defend the faith, for example, or if you want to be able to read the Bible in the original language that it was written in, you can actually get a lot out of the process of learning biblical Greek, and it can be very rewarding. And it has been for me. So that's why I want to basically share my tips on and experiences learning Greek. And as I continue to learn it, I'm not fluent in Greek, modern or biblical, but I am at a level now that I can pick up my New Testament and I can read it and I know what's going on. Not in every spot, but it's just something that comes from doing a little bit in the language every day. And in some days, I will say with Greek, you're going to lead. It took me a lot more effort to learn Greek and has taken me a lot more effort to learn Greek than Spanish. Spanish, by 3 years in, I was very happy with my level of fluency in Spanish. And I'm probably going on my 3rd year of Greek study now. And after 3 years of Greek, I'm happy with where I'm at, but I'm nowhere near where I was in Spanish at the same time. So you really do have to do a little bit every day. And then some days you should do a lot. You should be getting an hour or two and trying to just do that. And once you've reached that level where you can watch a movie in the language you're trying to learn or read novels and stuff, read before bed, achieved a level where you can kind of do that. It's not that hard to spend an hour a day or more, 2 to 3 hours a day. It's actually not that difficult. So just stick with it, do at least something in it every day, and then some days learn to love and be motivated by the language enough to stick with it. But anyway, that's enough of me rambling on about that whole process. If you have any questions, or resources, or recommendations, or anything like that, let me know in the comments. Let me know if this was helpful at all. And yeah, so if you did find this helpful, please like the video, subscribe. I will be probably making more videos on the process of learning Greek, things of that nature. And so yeah, so I appreciate your attention, and thanks for watching, and God bless.